In this video, we're going to be looking at the supply and demand functions. Demand is a consumer's willingness to purchase a good or service at a price P. So usually we use P for price and Q for quantity demanded, and typically in this class we're going to think of Q as a function of P. That means P is going to be our horizontal axis and Q is going to be our vertical axis. We know from common sense that when price is low, the number of people who want to buy a product is going to be high. So when our price is low, our demand, quantity demanded, is going to be high. When the price is high, this means our product is expensive, then the quantity demanded is going to be low. So what happens is we've got a downward sloping function or a decreasing function. With supply, we have this representing the amount of a good or service that is available for sale at a price P, and we're thinking of this in terms of the manufacturer's perspective. So P is the price that people are willing to pay, and Q is the quantity that the manufacturer is willing to produce for people to buy. Again, we have price is our horizontal axis, Q is our vertical axis, and Q is a function of price. When the price is low, the quantity supplied is going to be low because the manufacturer is not going to want to use their resources to produce something that doesn't get them very much in terms of profit. When the price is high, the quantity supplied is going to be high. So if the price is high, then the manufacturer is going to want to supply far more. So our supply function is always an upward sloping function or an increasing function. Now, if you've taken econ, oftentimes they reverse these. They'll put the Q on the horizontal axis and the P on the vertical axis. The same ideas work. Our book that we're using usually does it this way, so I'm going to do it this way. Market equilibrium, this is the place where the quantity supplied is the same as the quantity demanded. So if we look here, this blue line represents our supply function and the red line represents our demand function. These are going to be equal to each other at this spot right here, and this is what we call that equilibrium point. So on this particular graph, our equilibrium price is equal to $60. So we're going to assume this is in dollars here. And our equilibrium quantity, if we go over this way, is 300 units. So again, we got the price here and the quantity here. If we look at our graph, again we have the equilibrium price and quantity here where the two graphs intersect, two lines intersect. When our demand is larger than our supply, our quantity demanded here is above our quantity supplied. That means we have more people wanting to purchase the product than we have product available. And so over in this region, we have what's referred to as a shortage. Now, the actual gap between the two, this distance here, that's going to be the amount of the shortage for that particular price. We can look at the same type of thing, but over on the other side of our equilibrium point right here, if our quantity supplied is above our quantity demanded, then we have what's called a surplus. The amount of that surplus for any particular price is that gap between the supply curve and the demand curve. So in this situation, We have more product sitting on the shelf waiting for people to purchase them than we have potential buyers. Let's look at this particular graph, and it says, is there a shortage or a surplus when the price is $40? Looking here at $40 and going up to my graph here, we know that our demand quantity in this case is 350, whereas our supply quantity at $40 is 250. So our demand is larger than our supply, so this means we are going to have a shortage. And the amount of the shortage is that 350 minus the 250, or 100 units. So we have a shortage of 100 units. Looking at this next question, it says, is there a shortage or a surplus when the price is $90? So looking at my graph, I'm going to go here to $90 and I'm going to go up, and I see my supply in this case. The quantity supplied is this value, so that would be 375. And looking at my demand function, the quantity demanded is 225. So we see the amount supplied is larger than the amount demanded, so this means we're going to have a surplus. The amount of the surplus is that gap, that distance here, or you could think of it as 375 minus 225, which would be 150 units. So we have a surplus of 150 units. The last question we're asked is, what is the revenue when the price is $90? Now remember, our revenue is always our price times our quantity. And they tell us our price is $90. All we have to do is figure out our quantity. Now, looking at the two values that we just found, we know that sitting on the shelves, there are 375 units. But we only have a demand for 225 units. So the number that actually gets sold is 225 units. So we're going to take that 90 times the 225, and that's going to give us the value of our revenue. Let's look at this example where we're given our supply and demand functions in terms of formulas instead of in terms of a graph. We have our demand for a product is given by this formula, Q equals negative 2P plus 156, and our supply is given by Q equals 1.5P minus 12. Now notice that the demand curve has a negative slope, and so it has to be going downhill, which is what we expect for demand functions. Our supply curve has a positive slope, so it's going to be going up, which is what we expect for a supply function. We're also going to assume that P is in dollars and Q is the number of units produced. When we're trying to find the equilibrium price and quantity, what we're looking for is this spot right here where the two curves intersect. So what we need is to find where supply equals demand. Since both equations are given to us as Q equals, what we can do is we can just say that our supply Q, which is 1.5P minus 12, is going to equal our demand Q. So that's negative 2P plus 156. To solve this equation, what I want to do is get the P's on one side, the Q's on the other side. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the P's over there, the P's on one side and the numbers on the other side. I'm going to put the P's on the left and the numbers on the right. So this means what I'm going to be adding 2p to both sides, and then I'm going to add 12 to both sides. When I do that, I have 3.5p equals 168. To get p, all I need to do is divide both sides by 3.5. So I have p equals $48. So this is our equilibrium price. They also wanted the equilibrium quantity, so I need to take this p value and plug it into either one of those two functions. It doesn't matter which one I use. Let's go ahead and use the demand function. So if we plug in or substitute in our p, we're going to get -2 times 48 plus 156. So this gives us, or 60 units. In part B, we need to find out, is there a shortage or a surplus when the price is $60? So looking at our picture, we have a decreasing demand and increasing supply, and this spot right here is at $48. So if we're looking at $60, we know we're going to be over here, somewhere over here. So 60 is going to be over here. Remember, this is my supply, this is my demand. So my guess is this is going to be a surplus situation. But let's see how it works with the equations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what is my demand, the quantity demanded, when my price is $60. So I'm going to have -2 times 60 plus 156. That's -120 plus 156. This gives me 36. For my supply, I'm going to have Q equals 1.5 times 60 minus 12. 1.5 times 60 is 90 minus 12. That gives us 78. The gap between our demand and our supply is going to be 78 minus 36, which is 42. So we have a surplus of 42 units. We have another one, very similar question, but this time they're asking us what happens if my price is $30. So I'm going to calculate the actual demand for $30, and I get 96. Calculating the quantity supplied for $30, and I get 33 units. So our demand is larger than our supply, so we are going to have a shortage. The amount of the shortage is going to be the difference of those two numbers. 96 minus 33 is 63. Finally, we have another one of those revenue questions. So this time we're asked, what are we going to do if our price is $30? So remember, price times quantity is what we have for revenue. My price is going to be $30, but I need to figure out what is the quantity that I'm actually going to sell. So we have a demand of 96, but the number that we have available for sale is 33. So we're only going to sell 33 units. This gives us a revenue of 990. That's it for this video. Hopefully it was helpful.